Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Big Buck Shuck, where we're helping you become a better and more successful deer hunter. Today's episode, I want to talk about something that I think is one of the most important things when it comes to hunting, and that's safety. And this is kind of a hot topic right now in the saddle community, especially self-rescue and saddle safety in general. I woke up this morning, it's about 4:45 right now. I woke up about 3 o'clock, had a bad dream and just couldn't fall back to sleep. So I got up, got some coffee in me, and just thinking about a recent event that happened, and wanted to talk about it, and maybe I can help some of you avoid this happening. So a few days ago, a lady posted in the Facebook groups, in the saddle groups on Facebook, that her husband had an accident while practicing in his saddle, and he ended up passing away. So it's kind of a heavy-hearted video today. It's the worst possible outcome that can happen, trying to do what we love to do, and I just wanted to go through kind of some things that could help you avoid that situation for yourself, maybe help a friend, or family member, to have it not happen to them. So there's a few things that I want to talk about that should help prevent that, for whatever style hunting you do, whether it's in a saddle or a tree stand, and what to do if that happened. If you found yourself in that situation, some things that you could do, some preventative things that could help you navigate that and not have that happen to you. So to start off, I think that the most important thing when it comes to anything you do when it comes to hunting is being familiar with your equipment and practicing religiously, practicing so much that all of your equipment basically becomes an extension of yourself. I mean, whether it's your saddle or your ascending and descending technique, whether you use sticks or ropes or screw-in steps, ladders, I don't care what it is, your bow, your gun, all that stuff, you got to practice with it so much that it becomes just a part of you, like you're throwing a ball, like, catching a ball, like it's got to become so automatic in your head, and in your muscle memory has to be there for all of it, and that right there will prevent most incidents. If you're comfortable and you have a system, that's one of the most important things you have to get developed, especially if you're hunting out of a saddle or tree stands, and you have lifelines and safety harnesses and all that good stuff. You've got to have a system down to where your first move right on through to your last move. The first thing, as soon as you take that, before you even take your first step off the ground, you've got to have systems in order and in place that you can use that are just habit. You got to have that stuff down. The way you hook your carabiners, the way that your carabiners are facing, the way that you take your tether, whichever direction, whether you put it around the tree from your right or from your left, and how you loop that, your prusik knot or your ropeman, the tag end of that tether, the way that you put it around the tree is important, and it should be the same exact way every single time you put it on the tree. So you got to have those systems in place. I think it's the most important thing. If you're so familiar with your stuff that it's just automatic, before you undo your lineman's belt, like I said, all your carabiner's facing the same way as it always is. You clip your bridge in the same way every single time. You have a little tension on that tether before you unhook your lineman's belt. Making sure before you even do that your platform's nice and stable, or your steps or whatever you're using as a base to stand on. All that stuff, if you've got that all dialed in, that'll mitigate a lot of the problems. And it'll also give you the opportunity to see what, if you can see what the limitations are, see what the what could happen if you're standing on the ground and you hook up to your tree and you twist sideways, twist to the left and twist to the right, try to go as back as far as you can. See what the limitations are of your setup, and see if you can see where a problem could be. Because if you can figure out where a problem might start, you can do the things you need to do to prevent it from happening in the first place. And I'm not sure, I don't know the whole story on the gentleman that passed away. I don't know, there's a lot of speculation on any time an incident like that happens, but nobody really knows. Apparently he was practicing and somehow he got flipped upside down, and he somehow, from what I've read, he contacted a buddy. The guy got there to help him out and couldn't get his straps undone to get him out, to get him, from the weight of his body, the way it was positioned and whatever. Couldn't get the straps undone to get him out of the position that he was in, and he ended up passing away. And like I said, I don't know the whole story, but I do know that he was flipped upside down. That's from what his wife posted in the groups. And so I'm not saying that he did anything wrong. I'm not saying that it was the saddle. I'm not saying, something happened though, and he was by himself to begin with, which may or may not have mattered, because like I said, supposedly a friend came to help him out and couldn't get him undone. But regardless, when you're practicing, you should either be practicing at home before you go out into the woods, away from immediate help, or a lot easier to get help. You should be already familiar with all your equipment, just in your yard at ground level, get that system in place, and from there, a lot of us are mobile hunters. Obviously, we're mobile hunters. We've got saddles, so a lot of us are going way back into remote places, and there's not always going to be our buddy or our wife or whatever real close and accessible to us. So you gotta practice, guys. You have to practice. That it's the most important thing. One of my good friends, Will, he just got a cruiser saddle. He got the Archon, the 2-panel, and I said, man, you gotta practice. Like and he was kind of, I don't want to say he didn't care or anything like that, but I just think that it was kind of one of the things where it's like, well, it's just part of hunting. It's I'll figure it out and I'll be used to it and stuff like that. But I told him, I got on his ass a little bit. I'm like, dude, you gotta practice. Like, come over and we'll get you set up on a tree and get you familiar with all the stuff. It's not just climb up and hunt like in a tree stand or a blind. And so he did. He came over and we practiced, a little bit, and he's gonna practice some more before he actually goes out. And that's, I'm like, man, you gotta practice before you get out in the woods, because there's just so much. It's a learning curve, and there's so much that you have to do differently than just throwing on your hunter safety system vest and get climbing up, or attaching to your lifeline and getting up into your tree and hooking onto your strap. I mean, it's not as simple as that when you're in a saddle. So it's just vitally important that you get familiar with all the equipment if you are in a saddle, and your knots, all the different knots, the bridge. This bridge is adjustable. If you have an adjustable bridge like this Prusik knot moves. You can adjust this, like your leg straps. All the different things that aren't part of a normal tree stand or blind hunting setup. You've got to get familiar with it before you go out in the woods, because it's really simple to do this stuff in your yard when it's broad daylight, sun's shining. But when you walk out in the woods at 4 in the morning or at 5 in the morning, and you're in the dark, and you can't get that buckle, that leg strap, because some of these his Archon doesn't have these buckle style leg straps like this. These just clip in, real simple. That's locked in. Push these, it comes undone. Well, the Archon that he just got, it doesn't have that. It has almost, I don't even have one, but it has like a C-clip almost. It has a little spring-loaded tab, and that's what you use to clip that tab around a nylon loop on the saddle. And that, just getting those on there and hooked on was a pain in the ass. And I told him, I said, you don't want to be doing this when it's dark out, because you're going to get frustrated. You're going to say, it's just my leg strap, piss on it, I'll deal with it when I get up in the tree, and you can't do that when you're dealing with this style of hunting setup. I mean, everything has to work in conjunction. You have to be meticulous and brutally just particular about how you do what your system, how your system works. You have to have it all down. You can't be doing it in the dark and then trying to figure it out. You've got to have it all down and done before you go out to actually get up in a tree and hunt. So that's the most important thing, guys. Get that practice in. Practice. I mean, I can't beat it up enough. And do it with somebody else before you actually go hunting. I mean, like I said, practice in your yard, practice in your buddy's yard. Get the practice in before you go out in the woods. Even simple things like where you want your dump pouches. Like this one, I have it on my left side because when I unhook my lineman's belt, I stuff my lineman's belt in there. And when I'm done hunting, I put my tethers in here. But everything has its place. Everything I know, I can have my eyes closed and I can reach in and get myself set up on a tree, without even seeing it, because I know my system. You have to get that system down. I know where every carabiner is at on my saddle. You have to do that. So that's the most important thing. I'm not trying to beat it to death, but I am going to beat it to death because your life depends on it. And it's a sad day, seeing that lady's post. I couldn't imagine your wife, or your mom or your sister, whoever's most important to you, feeling like they have to post that just to save somebody else's life because of the trauma that they are going through from losing one of their loved ones. And it's just so important, guys, to practice and be familiar with all your stuff. Don't buy a saddle and just go hunting right off the bat. Get your ass in it, out in your yard. Get everything dialed in. That's the most important thing. So the next thing that I think is really important, and probably almost as equally important, just in the whole hunting realm of doing what we do, is some level of physical fitness. I mean, I know I've been working on myself, trying to be better. I love my dips and sauces. I love, that cheesecake and ice cream. But you guys have to have some level of physical fitness, some level of keep your body. You have to be able to do some sort of core exercise to keep your core strong. I mean, everything we do, especially when it comes to saddles, it requires physical strength. And whether it's climbing, whatever way you get up the tree, if you're SRT, DRT, all these different techniques, they all require some level of physical fitness. And in my opinion, you should, if you lay flat on the ground, on your back, you should be able, this is my opinion, but you should at least be able to sit up, keep your legs straight, and sit forward and hold your arms straight out and be able to touch your knees. I mean, if you can't do that, you got to change some things. You've got to eat better and start doing some sort of core exercise to get your body to be in a position and to be in a state of to be able to get yourself out of a position that you might find yourself in. You know, it goes way beyond just saddle hunting and getting up and down trees, but, you know, dragging deer and clearing brush and all the things that we do. You need some sort of physical strength and stamina to be able to competently get yourself out of a situation if you find yourself there. So and that's a whole nother, I could do a whole nother video on that, and I probably will. But get yourself, if you're out of shape and you're winded easy and you sweat profusely just by doing the simplest things, guys, you got to get yourself in a better bodily composition. Okay, it's not, I'm not shaming anybody. I lost 80 pounds. I was a big fat guy. I mean, so it's hard. I know it sucks, you know, but you got to do it. And to be able to keep doing what we love, you got to put yourself in a position to be able to get yourself out of a situation that you may or may not find yourself in. But so get yourself on a diet and some regular exercise, and that will help you should you ever find yourself in a position that you need to basically fight for your life. And so, guys, the next thing I want to talk about is your location. With today's technology, you know, most cell phones generally have service most of the places we hunt. I know there are some areas where there's not cell service, but before you even leave your house, before you get to your hunting area, what I do is every time I go hunt, if it's at Will's, state land, doesn't matter. If it's at Will's place, I just tell my wife that I'm going to Will's property because she knows where it's at. But if I'm going out on state land, and especially if I'm by myself, even if I'm not by myself, I always, every single time, get to the parking area, and I drop a pin on the I'll drop a pin especially if I know the tree that I'm going to. I'll drop a pin as close to that tree on my Onyx, or you can do it on Google Maps or whatever, and I'll take a screenshot of that and I'll send that right to my wife. And I'll say, you know, the blue icon is where I'm parked and the red one's where I'm going. And that's just so that if something ever happened, you know, if I wasn't responding, or if I called her and said, hey, I need you, or call help, whatever the situation, she at least has a physical reference as to where I'm at. And there's no, well, he's out on Jones Road or you know, Hickory Trail. He's not out there, or he's out there somewhere. You know, it's a specific, very detailed picture of where I'm at and where my car's at, where I'm going. And it's even better if you can send your route. You know, if you have service when you get to your tree, you get up there, get all set up, you know, turn your tracker on your Onyx and have it have a path going to your tree, and send that screenshot to your wife or to your buddy or your dad or somebody. Let somebody know where you're at. Especially, you know, a lot of us are going, you know, miles back. You know, if you're going back in across a big ass cattail marsh that's waist deep in muck, you know, there's just the trek out there alone can be dangerous, let alone when you get there, and then trying to get back out in the dark. So, you know, take the time before you even step foot out of your car to give somebody something to go by of where you're at. Because if you don't have certain, like if they can't track your phone or something, you know, something crazy happens, you can't, there's nothing else you can do after that. And once you're out there, you're out there. And, you know, if you give at least that information, you're cutting down the amount of time. If something happened to you, somebody knows right where to go. They don't have to, they can literally go on their phone, you know, especially if you share the pinpoint with them, they can click right on it and have GPS coordinates, latitude and longitude right where you're at. And that's the best case, and that cuts down all that time that they're sitting there trying to find you and track you down. And so it's really important to share your location before you even go, if you can, you know. And I can't stress that enough either. That's a big one. So the next thing, if you find yourself in a precarious situation, I suggest always having a knife on you in an accessible pocket, and preferably maybe in a sheath that's attached to a carabiner on your saddle, so that if you find yourself flipped sideways or upside down or something and you can't get yourself back up and you have nothing to grab onto, you know, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be close to your sticks, or you're going to be somehow attached or close to your ropes. And if you find yourself flipped over and you can't get out of it, at least then you can grab your knife, you know. And I know it's not the best advice, but if you can grab onto a stick or somehow grab onto your climbing rope, you know, whatever you're using, or a screw-in step or a ladder rung, if you can get a hold of something and cut yourself out of your saddle, whether you have to cut, you know, if you have to cut a leg strap, if you've got to cut your waist buckle, who knows what situation you're going to be in. But at least if you have that knife, you can, if anything, at worst, alleviate the pressure on your legs or whatever's being pinched, whatever's being, you know, suffocated, because it doesn't take long, and that blood supply, especially if you fall, I mean, it's not good if you fall and the blood in your legs is cut off from the rest of your body, because that blood, it starts turning toxic. If it doesn't have oxygen going to it, it starts basically just going bad. And if that gets pumped back into your system somehow, you know, it can lead to some bad outcomes. So if you can cut yourself out and get yourself out of the situation, flip back the right way. I know it's not the best advice, but I would rather cut myself out and risk falling than sit there and hang and die. So always have a knife, an accessible knife. You know as well as I do, you put this saddle on, and for those of you that don't know, you put this saddle on. I'm not going to put it on actually, but once you get this on, your back pockets are now useless. I've left my phone in my back pocket before, tried getting it out once I'm sitting up there, and it's literally a pain in the ass. You can't get anything out of your back pockets and your side pockets once this is around you and has pressure on it. Even these front pockets here you have a hard time getting into them. So it's best to keep a knife attached somewhere onto this saddle on the outside, or like I said, an accessible, if you have a zippered pocket here in your jacket that you can reach in. But even then, you know, pockets are an iffy thing too, because if you have your knife in your pocket or your cell phone and you flip some certain way and you don't have that zipped, you know, it's falling out. So the best thing to do, have a sheath on here and a foam clip attached to this somehow, keeping everything on the outside of your saddle so you can get to it. So next thing I want to talk about is climbing techniques. Guys, it's kind of a rabbit hole, okay? A lot of the times we're getting so far into how to get up and down a tree the quickest and easiest way, and in my personal opinion, I think that it's taking away, especially guys that don't practice enough and aren't familiar with whatever style of hunting that they're trying, or climbing and ascending and descending that they're trying to do. I think that they don't practice enough, they're not familiar with it, and I think for me, it overcomplicates things. I personally like sticks, multiple sticks that I can place anywhere on the tree depending on the limbs and foliage, and I have a 3-step aider, and a lot of guys have the AM steel aiders that are fixed on the steps. There's tons of different options out there, but I like sticks because you can place them anywhere, and they're a fixed step for you to step on. So if you're doing SRT, the single rope technique, or DRT, double rope technique, it's actually, for those of you that don't know, there's a knot on a rope, and or a mechanical device, a ropeman or a calling dock that you're using to climb the tree. And then once you're done hunting, you rappel down. And I just think that, in my personal opinion, yes, it's an amazing way to climb. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or anything like that, but I'm saying that if you aren't familiar with that or in the physical condition to be able to do that effectively, you can put yourself in a dangerous situation. And for me, I prefer a fixed step that's attached to the tree, something I can grab onto, and I'm not just hanging there off of a rope. Not to mention, a lot of the trees that we hunt out of are in swamps and stuff, and they're not strong enough. The limbs aren't strong enough to hold our body weight, from a rope. So I don't trust it myself. A lot of guys love it, and I'm not saying that it's wrong or that it's dangerous. I mean, it is inherently dangerous. All this stuff is, but I'm not saying that that's a worse off way to climb. I'm saying that for me, I would rather have a fixed step. And I'm also saying that if you're going to use a rope climbing technique, you have got to practice with it like your life depends on it before you go out in the woods, because it does. Your life depends on all this stuff that I'm talking about. And so you have to, in everything, your steps, your ropes, your aiders. Aiders are another big thing that a lot of guys have trouble with. The fixed aiders, like your am steel aiders that are on the bottom rungs of your sticks, those are pretty nice because they're out away from the tree. As far out as them steps are from the tree, those aiders are straight down from that. So there's room in there to get your boot on that step, and it doesn't swing in as far when you step on it. So like my aider, I have a 3-step from Backwoods Mobile Gear, and a lot of times I'll hook that on my top step, and that bottom, I should have grabbed it out, but that bottom, once I hook it up to the top step, that bottom likes to swing in, especially when I go to put my foot in it. So now it's right up against the tree, and I've actually got to flick it a little bit with my foot to get it out so that I can get my boot in there and get a good solid footing. And I've practiced with it enough that I'm really comfortable with it. I know right how to flick it with my foot, my boot, to get it pulled out so I can get my feet in there and step on it. My buddy Tommy used it, and he hated it. He didn't want to mess with it, so he got the am steel aiders off the bottoms of his sticks, which is fine. Like I said, do what is most comfortable for you, that you're gonna use the most effectively. But the aiders is another huge thing, because if you're not familiar with those and you don't get your foot in there right, or your stick kicks out, if you don't have your stick set and locked down properly, that aider can put a different twist on that stick and kick it out, and now you're hanging, in midair off your tether, or even sliding down the tree if you got your lineman's belt hooked up, scraping your shins and your chest and all that. So just, you guys got to be really in tune with all your stuff and practice with it all. Practice it with it in your yard, just like if you were going out in the woods to hunt. Every process, from setting your stick, locking it, using your aiders, ascending the tree with your lineman's belt, always keeping that on you. A lot of guys just climb the tree without it on and not think anything of it. And I used to do the same thing. I did, and especially when I was younger, I got pictures of standing up 25 feet up in a tree on a tree stand, the little cheap platforms, and it was just stupid and uncalled for. And now that especially since I had kids, I really realized, like, I gotta keep, safety's at top priority, so and tree stand guys too, not just saddle hunters, but tree stand guys. If you guys are number one, you should have a lifeline right to the ground. You should be ascending with that lifeline all the way up. It should always be attached to that harness, whatever style harness you're using. The vest style hunter safety vests are, in my opinion, if I was a tree stand hunter still, I would use one of those, because that black webbing seatbelt stuff that you get with your tree stands, I think they're junk. I'm sure they work fine, but they're a pain in the ass to mess with. And so, but from the time you step off the ground, you should be, or before you step off the ground, you should be hooked to your lifeline. And then once you get up into your stand and get yourself, before you unhook from that lifeline, you should be hooked up to your strap on the tree, and then unhook your lifeline. So, you know, all that stuff, you guys tree stand hunters, just like saddle hunters, you got to have that stuff dialed in, practiced, and you know how the knots slide. If you're using Prusik knots, sometimes they bite so much, you got to wiggle them and loosen them up a little bit to get them to go, or to come down. So you have to get that stuff familiarized in your brain and get, like I said, like it's an extension of you, and that'll prevent so much from happening. And for tree stand guys too, once you're up there, if something happens, say you fell off your stand or fell asleep, nodded off and fell off, and you're swinging there, you know, something for you guys to remember, the shock load, when you fall, a 200-pound guy falling like 4 feet and stopping within a foot, okay, that's 800 pounds of force. So when you're falling roughly 4 feet, and that, say your tether grabs, when you stop, that's about 800 pounds of force if you're a 200-pound guy in 1 foot. So if that strap stops you in 6 inches, now you're at 1,600 pounds of force. So that alone can really shock you. I mean, really affect you. And not to mention, once you're stopped and hanging there, you've got to figure out how to get off. So, but regardless, I'd rather have to figure that out than not being hooked up and being on the ground with a broken back or dead, you know. So bottom line, guys, buy the best that you can afford as far as any of your equipment goes. I'm not knocking any brands or anything, but in my opinion, it's just like anything else in life. You get what you pay for, and I think that not necessarily the more money you spend, but usually the more money that something costs, the better quality it is. I mean, you know, your Hawk saddles are made overseas. Not that that's make or break, but for me, I prefer American-made stuff. I just think that the stitching's better. I think that the overall designs of the saddles are better, and there's a ton of them out there, you know, that are made right here in the USA, that they go through, you know, obviously go through a lot of testing and all that stuff. And so buy the best equipment that you can afford, the best saddle, the best ropes, the best safety gear, the best harness if you're a tree stand hunter. You know, buy the best that you can afford, and that will definitely help out. So, and I just want to reiterate the real bottom line is practicing. All right, so you guys have to practice, get it in your brain, burned in there, like that ex-girlfriend that got away. Burn that stuff, the practice part, into your head. Get out there, help a buddy, have a buddy help you. You know, 2 sets of eyes are better than 1. It's, you know, he might see something that you don't, and vice versa. And get familiar with all your stuff, because the last thing that anybody wants is another post on Facebook, on all the groups that we had to see these last few days. And so it's really important, guys, and I hope you guys take heed and take it seriously, because, you know, your wife, your kids, anyone that loves you doesn't deserve to lose you just because you didn't want to take the time to prepare and practice and get better with your equipment. And I don't know about you, even aside from this, that's the most important thing is your family. But even aside from that, I got way too many big bucks to chase to end my life over something, over not practicing. So I hope that's how you guys feel. And I just want to say that the saddle community, that's hunters in general, I've said this before, hunters are some of the best people in the world, but just the outpouring of support and love for the lady and the gentleman that passed away and his wife, it's awesome to see. It's sad, super sad, but you know, like I said, you saddle guys are awesome folks. So I'm super proud and happy and glad to be a part of it. And I extend my deepest condolences to that young lady as well, from here at Big Buckshot. I mean, so sorry to see that happen, and I can't imagine what her and their family's going through right now. So we'll be sending prayers up for you guys, for those guys. And like I said, guys, practice with these things, but can't say it enough. So if you guys got value out of any of this, hit like and subscribe, share with your friends. Everybody needs a little boot in the ass once in a while when it comes to safety, a little tune up. And this is a sad way to get that tune up, but share this with somebody that needs to think a little bit and might need some help along the way. So if you guys got value, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you guys all in the next video.